Hey everybody, good morning. My name is Matt Robinson, the Gregarious Hermit. Today I just want to give you a really quick overview of my new book, Understanding Happiness. And this is the Pocket Companion Workbook. So it's a prelude to the big book that's coming out hopefully in 2023. But this is to support my workshops and public speaking. So it basically contains my core message about what I think is going on with the mind. So, to give you a little bit of background about the book, a few years ago, I found myself in a situation where I was just overwhelmingly stressed, and life didn't seem to be going the way that I thought it would. And the stress became so great that I actually experienced an ego death and spontaneous spiritual awakening. So I went through this wonderful transformative process, and for the time that I was out of my body and basically one with the universe, I felt just this unbelievable bliss and peace and just knowing that everything was okay. Then when I came back, all of my stress seemed to have disappeared. Now, my physical circumstances were still the same, but the stress that I was experiencing had completely vanished, and things didn't seem to upset me anymore. And what I noticed was that with the ego death, basically my mind had gone completely silent. So I spent about a year with a completely silent mind. And in that time, I had many revelations and kind of eureka moments, I guess, that gave me great understanding and insight into what the mind is actually doing. And so this is just a theory. Hopefully, some more people will pick up research and study this more formally. But this is my understanding of what our problems are these days and why so many people are facing mental health problems. So I identified three processes that our mind seems to do, and they served us really well in our primitive environment. So the first thing that our mind does is keep a list of our personal experiences and categorizes them as being either good or bad for us. Now, in our prehistoric days, this meant steering us towards food that was good for us or places that were safe, and steering us away from, foods that could be poisonous and make us sick, or where, dangerous animals lived. But in our modern society, we're exposed to so much more through television and the internet. And so this list has now been hijacked and has become basically a list of wants and desires that, on a fundamental level, look as though they will improve our chances of survival. But of course, we're not operating in survival mode anymore. So we actually don't need this process. And the book goes into a lot of detail about why we no longer need to hang on to this list the way that we used to and the way that it would have served us in the past. Now, the second thing that our mind does is problem solving. So again, in our prehistoric days, that would have been how to get across a river to, get apples from a tree that you can see on the other side. And so your mind would basically visualize ways to get across the river safely. But now in our modern landscape, where we have so much abundance and such variety, that this mechanism now is almost always on. Almost everything that we do in our daily life starts to look like a problem. Every time you go to the supermarket, there's a bewildering choice of produce, and so your mind tries to identify the best choice. And just the way that our society has evolved, this mechanism is pretty much on constantly. Now, the problems are not very difficult to solve, but it's just the sheer volume of them, and our mind has become stronger and stronger as a result. And when it problem solves, it basically has to identify all of the characteristics that make a choice a good choice versus a bad choice. So with all of the options, it has to figure out which one is going to be the best. And this leads us to being judgmental. Essentially, we judge and categorize everything that we see. And again, the book goes into tremendous detail about this. Now, the third thing that our mind does is keep us safe when we experience an immediate threat. So, for example, if I'm walking in the woods and I see a bear, I will instantly freeze and my mind will go into problem-solving mode again. and it will try to identify the best way to avoid being attacked by the bear or to defend against the bear. And our mind still does the same thing now. The only thing is we don't really experience physical threats anymore. All of our challenges and threats are basically other people judging us and other people's minds. So we have this fear of judgment that drives so much of the conversation in our head. And, the book shows you how to observe that within yourself so that you can actually identify that mechanism and you can kind of see that it's actually unnecessary. So again, our biggest threat these days is kind of a fear of judgment. And because we judge so much, we basically expect to be judged by everybody else too. And when you see the conversations in your head and you can kind of see that that's basically what's happening, you can learn to drop those thoughts completely. So the last part of the book covers 3 tools that you can use to, first of all, identify your mind in action. So through meditation, you will learn to observe the mind, as well as get rid of the daily stress that builds up in your body. But fundamentally, you will use that tool to observe your mind in action and kind of see the stories that it tells you and put them into perspective and, understand where those stories are coming from. And again, it comes back to those 3 very primitive processes that are going on in the mind. The second thing I teach is mindfulness. And that really has the power to silence your mind completely by getting us away from mental activity and back in towards the physical and really honing in on the fine details of all of the physical tasks that you're doing. It basically takes you away from focusing on your mind. You have the ability to focus on just one thing at a time. Most of the time, we're focused on what our mind is saying and not focused on what we're actually doing. So I teach not just the technique of mindfulness, but how you can actually supercharge that process. Basically like skills and drills. Just like any soccer player gets really good at kicking the ball by practicing kicking the ball, not by playing matches. And the same with mindfulness. You learn mindfulness by starting really tiny and just honing those skills until you can expand them out into your everyday life. And then the third thing that I teach is unconditional love. Although in the book I phrase it as extreme health hacking because so many people have such a hard time with that word love. So unconditional love basically is pre-programming your default response. Instead of just responding, angrily or all of the ways that you would have responded in the past that you've basically built up throughout your life, now you're basically saying, I don't want to respond that way anymore. I just want to respond with unconditional love. And it sounds like that's a really nice thing to do, but really it's all internal. It doesn't mean that you walk around saying, I love you to everybody all day long, but literally you're changing your chemistry into a loving, kind chemistry that is healthy and has tremendous benefits and healing properties. And basically, if you want to look at it as a health hack, you're changing your chemistry into such a positive state. And what you'll find is that your mind stops judging things because it no longer has to. You already told it, I love that, or I'm feeling love towards that. So how can you possibly get angry or frustrated? So that really has the power to change your life tremendously. So again, a quick overview. The book covers 3 things that our mind is doing that don't work so well in modern society, and then 3 things that you can do to change those behaviors and see them for what they are. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little overview. If you buy a copy of the book, I definitely appreciate feedback. Some people don't necessarily understand it right away, but they very often have an aha moment a little bit down the road. So, stick at it. The process is very, very simple, very straightforward. It's so simple, in fact, that it's one of those things you'll probably go, why hasn't anybody else seen this before? It seems so obvious. So anyway, I'm hoping that this little book has the power to change the world and certainly change you make you happier and find that inner peace that we all seem to be looking for these days. All right, thanks for watching. Again, my name is Matt Robinson, the Gregarious Hermit, and my book is Understanding Happiness, and it's the Pocket Companion Workbook. Okay, thanks for watching, everybody.